Hey everybody, welcome to Sapper Woodworking. Thanks for tuning in. I get a lot of questions regularly via comments or direct messaging on my use of a donut chuck that I use to turn the bottom of my bowls. So before I go a little bit into my idea of a donut chuck, I want to talk to you a little bit about two different methods that I use to turn and finish the bottom of a bowl. This isn't going to be a build video on how to do a donut chuck. There's plenty of those out on the internet. Just do a quick search on how to make a donut chuck and you're going to find some great videos. This is going to be a little bit about a comparison between a cold chuck that I sometimes use and a donut chuck, and how simple they are to use, and just some basic methods and processes that I do use. So what I had done previously for a lot of years was use what's called a cold chuck. Cold chuck is simply a flat piece of aluminum or other material that mounts onto your four-jaw chuck. These aren't exactly cheap. A movable four-jaw chuck could be anywhere from $100 to $200 depending on the brand and size. And the cold jaw chuck itself is anywhere from $60 to $100. And this happens to be the 12-inch version. You can get an expansion piece to make this up to 15 inches. So you could end up spending anywhere from $150 to $250 on this setup. And how these work, it's actually pretty simple. There's a little rubber bumper set. You can set these for any particular size, and the little rubber bumper has a little bit of a taper to it. So if you're going to mount a bowl like this, you'd want to put the rubber bumpers on the inside and expand out to hold your item. If you might have a bowl like this, which has an angle going the opposite direction, you might want to have the rubber bumpers on the outside pressing in. So this is a pretty simple process. I'll just put that on there, and now it's nice and loose. It'll fall off. I'll take my chuck key, and as I'm turning this around, those jaws are expanding out and making contact with the inside of that bowl. And now it's on there. And a couple things you got to be aware of is if your bowl is thin, these jaws can put a tremendous amount of pressure. So you could easily, and I've done this, you could easily crack the bowl by putting too much pressure. This is not, it's rock solid, but still, as you turn the bottom of the bowl, you could still easily have a catch with one of your tools, and this thing could come flying off. I have on occasion taken super strong rubber bands, depending on what kind of bowl I'm using, and I'll put some rubber bands on there to help keep that on. I've used duct tape or different kinds of tape. This is a pretty safe setup because I'm not that far away from the faceplate here. If you're turning something really thin, this will hold a lot better than if you're turning something really tall that has some bottom counterweight to it. So this does work, but there still is a little bit of a safety issue involved. So a couple of years ago, I did catch a YouTube video. I saw the donut chuck concept, and I decided to go ahead and make one on my own. It's a pretty simple process. In this case, I got some scrap plywood, a faceplate, which these might be about $35 for an extra one because this is a permanent one that's always mounted here, and some scrap screws. In this particular case, this is a slightly less than a 15-inch disc, which is the capacity of my lathe. I did end up cutting this out on my CNC machine so I could get nice perfect grooves for the bolts to go in, but you can just as easily drill a hole here, and cut this out with a jigsaw because you do not particularly need perfectly straight grooves. So then you'll make a set of discs, and I just make the first type of bowl for the first size that you're going to use, and I keep adding to my collection as I want them to fit a certain way. So this one fits 6.5 inch rooms. This one is an 8 3/4 inch, which I'll be using today, and you just drill corresponding holes in the same size that they will line up perfectly to your groove. So I will demonstrate the use of one today. This particular bowl was one that I actually made this in high school, and I will date myself today. This was made around 1981, I believe. And I've had this at my mom's had this at her house, and she does regularly use it. And it used to have some green felt on the bottom to protect it. And that was the bottom of what this bowl looked like when it came off the lathe in 1981. So I want to go ahead and try to smooth that out and professionalize that a little bit. So what we're going to do is I decided the best thing to do here, because this is definitely a bigger diameter than my cold chuck, we're going to go ahead and use donut chuck. So again, here I've got the faceplate mounted here. I'm just putting it inside of this little plastic container here to hold it steady. And I will take the bowl and center it as best I can. And then I know that the 8 3/4 will typically be the best fit for here. Now, one time I did do a bowl and just put the outer ring on here and tightened it down, and it ended up leaving a little bit of a gouge in the side of the bowl. So what I've started to do is just take a little piece of carpet padding and put that in each side. And I'm going to go ahead and turn this around, line my holes up a little bit and kind of squeeze down on that. And that's going to prevent me from marring up my bowl. Then I've got some bolts. So your cost to make one of these is a couple pieces of scrap wood, $35 chuck, and maybe $5, $6 in hardware. Quite a bit cheaper than a cold chuck. And I'll just put that down here. You notice that I am, since this will be the working side while I'm on the lathe, I'm putting the excess end of the bolt on the side that faces my lathe, because I do not want metal bolts spinning anywhere near my hand when I'm flush turning this. And we'll go ahead and tighten all these down. Okay, so I've got all the 3 bolts. These are just hand tight. They're still a little bit loose, so I'm just going to double check, see how well this is lined up. And we're just going to go ahead and crank these down a little tighter. Try to keep my pressure even. And I'll tighten them even further once I get this mounted on the lathe. So now we've got, this is what it will look like sideways. Got my padding protecting the bowl from being marred. On the face of the donut chuck is some carpet padding, the little fuzzy stuff that keeps your things from moving around inside your drawers. That's some scrap of that, and glued that on there so I don't mar the front of the bowl. And now we'll put that on the lathe, and we'll show you how I can finish the bottom of this bowl. And notice again how the bolts are facing to the side of the lathe headstock and away from my hands, because you do not want that spinning. And if you do this setup, I'd also recommend that you use a carriage bolt, which has a smooth top. You don't want to even have just a regular hex bolt out of there, because you don't want to catch that on your hands or fingers. So let's move this over to the lathe and we'll turn the bottom. All right, okay, so I got my bowl securely mounted on the lathe. The bolt's nice and tight. My padding to protect everything, and let's see if we can get some turning and finish the bottom of this bowl. I guess I should say refinish it, almost 40 years later. Okay, we've got the bowl bottom finished. Let's go ahead and pop it off here. Now I'll be able to finish the bottom nice and safely. And we'll go ahead and add a little finishing touch. We'll go ahead and cut out a little groove on the drill press and add a little medallion here. So I think I'm gonna pick the bronze one, but you know, if you all think I should have done the pewter color, be sure to let me know down in the comment section. Thanks for watching today. If you have any comments or questions, please write them below. If you enjoyed this video and would like to see more like it, please click the thumbs up button and subscribe, and you'll be notified when we update and post new videos. Thanks.